Hello there, and welcome to my new experimental format for scripted GAC videos. I'll be taking you through my thought process when first encountering opponents' profiles and scouting information, and how I use that data to build a strategy when making my choices for tackling the board. If anything went wrong in these fights, or if I make any mistakes, I'll be breaking that down as well. There's a ton more work that goes into this format, but I also think it has potential to be much more useful and constructive. So please, let me know what you think and any feedback you might have. There's a channel in my Discord specifically dedicated to giving feedback if you're in the mood. Without further ado, let's jump into the first one. This matchup started off looking extremely promising, but broke down a bit as I started looking more closely. Right off the bat, seeing double GL, Jedi Knight Luke, and a high relic Vader usually means that the opponent is going to be more willing to post a higher defense, but checking his account speeds and checking the GAC compare in Hotbot showed a pretty staggering difference in mod farming. Going into his GAC history made it pretty clear that a heavy defense wasn't in the cards. Instead, a different type of problem became apparent very quickly, as he wasn't showing an early Kylo like he usually did in his history. This opened up the possible risk that he held both GL intending to mirror, and he had posted pure cheese on defense. If he went this route, suddenly we're playing an efficiency game, and my north wall wasn't really built to handle that type of overkill. Knowing this was a concern, and with no major teams in the north wall, I really just had to worry about tackling Padme on the south wall to get information on what he was hiding. The Padme problem came from how I normally like to take her down, using Nest. My Nest is up to 175% tenacity now, but his Padme and Anakin were threatening 76 and 79% potency, including 3PO unique. This put Padme at a 4% chance of dropping an uncleansable stun on Nest, and a 1% chance of Anakin hitting her with heal block. Hermit Yoda and Watt are usually the two potential supporting pieces for Nest with Kira against Padme, but they're also irreplaceable pieces of the counters for Kylo and Rey, respectively. So that left me with a handful of options. Option 1 would just be to run gas lead clones against Padme, since spending him wouldn't really impact my ability to take on any other teams in the rear. The biggest issue with this option is that the banners were easily the worst option of the group, with no protection banners and a high likeliness of 5 sacrificing at minimum. Option 2 would be to just handshake the RNG risk and run plain Kira Nest with no assisting third. While 1% might sound small, it's important to remember that 3PO, Padme, and GK all have mass assist calls that will be repeatedly activating that 1% chance, significantly increasing the risk of Nest being put in an impossible position. It was an option that could work, but if any of those RNG risks came true, chances became extremely high that it's an auto loss. Option 3 was to gamble that Rey wouldn't be posted on defense and rear, and add Watt to the team. Given the fact that he used Rey mirror in his offensive history and posted Watt in his north wall, this actually seemed like a relatively safe risk to take. At the very least, if he did post Rey in rear, I knew the chances of him getting a full clear on me got a lot lower as he would get stuck on my south wall, so the win would still be secured. Still, with the possible risk of this being an efficiency game, Kira Nest Watt posting 56 banners was less than I wanted to give up, which opened the door for what I went with, option 4. I hadn't tried this before, but I had the idea that Watt's tank tech cleanse might actually open the door for cutting Kira lead entirely. Watt pulling the offense down off of Nest actually left her with more overall offense than a Nest with Kira lead and Master's training as well as offense down. That logic seemed sound enough to me, so I went for it. Anakin's kill came right at the timing that I expected it to, but things still came pretty close to the wire. The biggest threat in this situation actually becomes Ahsoka assists eating so much of your time. Once Padme drops, the rest of the fight can end in seconds as long as Nest gets some strong counters off. With 4 seconds left on the clock, Ahsoka went down and the match was decided. The gamble had a double payoff as well, since General Skywalker has a super favorable undersized matchup against Night Sisters, and I didn't feel pressured to hold on to him for other potential matchups. While I think Gas +1 can take this matchup fairly often, I opted to go +2 just to play it safe. With the sisters out of the way for a respectable 61, the rear was finally open with the strategy I was expecting to see. Supreme Leader Kylo with a Jedi team ready to take him on, and a Mon Mothma team that wasn't too scary. And with that, the rest of the board could be assessed as well. Jedi Ribbon with Luke is the only team that could take out Kylo, so I went for that battle immediately to knock it out. Being on a live show and discussing the techniques with Zareth and Solobass, I opted to give their method a shot, but I think that led to one major difference that ended up making this fight more messy. In the choice between using Luke's stun or buff first, I've always preferred making Luke's buff and getting up his counterattacks. One aspect it really ended up hurting was the lack of damage when going for the kill shot on Sith Trooper here. Because of lack of damage, he was left healthy and it ended up forcing the fight into a much more awkward end. "51 banners, pretty unfortunate, but not unexpected." I went into Traya vs Mon Mothma pretty quickly and feeling pretty gung-ho, but I was a bit surprised at how hard it was to keep paying consistently. Their Mon Mothma as well as some other characters had some extra tenacity on them. And I had pulled my potency cross off of Scion in the last GAC lock. Traya took consistent heat over the course of this fight. It was near death the whole time. It was really uncomfortable. Still, the fight ended with 60 banners, which was super necessary after having Kylo eat so many. I knew from his defense history that his Grievous team would be vulnerable to Night Sisters, which is partly why I pulled them off of defense. It's incredibly efficient from a roster perspective, but it still can only achieve a 55. Still, the alternative team options that I had left would only put up a 55 as well, so I might as well use them as the cheaper team. This fight ended up being pretty bizarre due to my opponent's suboptimal mods and Grievous doing so little damage. Typically, you expect your sisters to die a ton and get thrown in the blender, and for Daka to bring them back. But in this case, the fight ended up drawing out a lot longer. Alzin whiffed a ton on the initial plague, which also definitely didn't help the match time at all. In the end though, still a comfy 55. At this point I had a ton left, so it really just came down to trying to pick the best banner outcome. His geos were pretty slow, so I knew that Grievous had a pretty good shot of controlling the matchup. I don't think it's actually a matchup that I've tried before, but without a fast Brood Alpha, I really didn't see much danger here. To no surprise, target lock on 5 people pretty much ran away with the match. If my B1 were just a bit stronger on damage output here and was able to get the killing blow with this AoE, then it would have been a solid finish for 59 banners. Instead, I walked away with 58. For Grievous on offense, it's essential that you try to get the killing blow after you've topped somebody off with B1, but before Grievous goes again to cost you a banner. Lastly was Rebels against Newt Dooku with Django, which I went with because of the control for high banners, but came pretty close to a timeout risk. Normally, Nest is the big concern, but can be dealt with by chipping her over time. Because this Nest was so weak, she died in one shot at the start of the battle, and that made the clock a lot shorter for letting Django finish his 2 damage-immediate turns. This ended up turning into a bit of a nail-biter trying to time moves for when Django was above 50% turn meter so that he could finish his second turn. I'm pretty sure his damage immunity ended when I was 1 hit away from being stuck on him forever. The ship battle was bizarre. It really isn't worth commenting on almost. For whatever reason, they chose not to use Anakin's ship in the starting team comp, and if he was a reinforcement, I didn't see him before the fight ended. We went through 2 of them. So I'll just play through this at high speed and enjoy that, I guess. All told, I cleared the board with an okay finish of 1921. Obviously, the different method with Luke lead really ended up taxing banners the most, and Night Sisters against Grievous dropping 55 is also a pretty big chip. As expected, my opponent wasn't able to counter my Supreme Leader Kylo since I included Darth Revan, although for what it's worth, they gave up once they saw it and didn't actually take a swing. All told, I think the banner tax region I had set up north feels a bit too exploitable if it gets hit with overwhelming cheese. I didn't get punished this time around, but given my overall mod lead, there really wasn't that much of a need to give them a win condition. Bit of a disappointing round in terms of defense challenge, but still some solid lessons to learn nonetheless. And yeah, that'll be it for this first video. Hopefully this is a much better format. I think when I first started doing GAC Abridged, it was kind of just a clip show, kind of putting together pieces from the stream. And I didn't feel like it was interesting. I know some people said it was great for them being a shorter format, and this will still be a shorter format, but I figure why not try to turn this into a more informative, scripted piece of content, which hopefully I can get the time down on making these a lot more. I actually just learned a couple of things that I think will certainly help in that respect. We'll see. Yeah, let me know what you think. Keep on keeping on. More improvements to the channel coming soon. Thanks for watching.